We're here at the Resilience Lab, which is the place where Resilience Frontiers comes to life. Resilience Frontiers is an initiative that seeks to develop a new way of thinking on the different tenets of resilience in the long term. And we look at natural resources as one of the pathways, and the core element of that discussion is about water. So we see water as sort of the main source of sort of resilient livelihoods once you take into account the need to have a very revised relationship with the world around us, because that's the whole idea of Resilience Frontiers. It's changing the mindset and adjusting our relationship to our natural resources and to nature. And so the question here about water is, as we move towards the next decade and the decade afterwards, how can we make use of frontier technologies? How can we take account of the increasing risks and the increasing hazards in redefining our relationship with water and with all natural resources and with the natural support system in order to create a desirable future where issues of water stress are no longer concerns for us, but rather we can then have a sustainable life with good quality of water, good quantity of water for everyone on Earth without leaving anyone behind. So that is the essence of Resilience Frontiers. It has eight pathways, and I think that the pathway on water is particularly seminal in the achievement of the requirements that are envisioned by this initiative, which is a very long-term thought process and has long-term ambition for reaching a resilient world, a regenerative world, one where natural resources are sustained and where stewardship is part of our DNA as we move forward. So this is Resilient Frontiers. Alex.
Yeah, and within the 8 pathways of Resilience Frontiers that have been introduced, water is obviously one of them. And as Global Water Partnership, if we have learned anything from our work in over 20 years, is that you cannot apply today's thinking, stationary thinking, in terms of solving the challenges of water today. You have to think long term. Water investments, water planning, whether it's regulation or policies, they take a long time. You need a long-term perspective. So we are very interested and honored to participate in Resilience Frontiers within the framework of the UNFCCC's Nairobi Work Program, where we are also have submitted a pledge to us to support new ways of thinking. So when it comes to water resources management, if we imagine the world in 2030, it's going to be a very different world. And the one way to see this is what has happened in terms of the massive transformation in the last 15 years or so. 15 years ago, very few people could be able to do online banking on their smartphone. But today, almost everyone can do it who has access to the technology. If you look at what's happening in the fields of medicine, for instance, in the field of technology, in the fields of electric cars and the renewable energy, massive transformation. So the world in 2030 is going to be fundamentally different, and 2030 is only about just over 10 years. It takes more than that to do proper planning and investments for water management. So we have to apply a completely different way of thinking, and this is where Resilience Frontiers becomes extremely a very useful framework for the Global Water Partnership and its over 3,000 partners around the world and other partners working on water, that we have to reimagine the future and forget about today's thinking. Today's context is not relevant. It is useful in helping us to reflect about the mistakes we have made and learn lessons from them. Examples we have looked at, for instance, is what has happened to the ROC. The big disaster that has happened there, what can we learn from that? What has happened from Lake Chad, which is almost disappearing in Africa? Can we continue on that path? Can we continue trying to fix by simply developing the scenarios in terms of water management from today? We need to learn lessons. What has happened to the Cape Town water crisis? There are valuable lessons that should be, or indicate to the fact that we need to step back and have a new way of thinking and look beyond 2030. Thank you very much.